Biggest factor of leverage is actually in healthcare.
Most incredible thing about healthcare and caregiving is you don't know what you don't know.
When family members visited patients in hospitals, the patients actually took longer to recover than if family members didn't go to visit them. When you put that time, you will figure things out. It's incredible how humans figure out things when they commit.
So true.
If someone can be trusted with small things, they can be trusted with big things.
The ANH Podcast.
Welcome back. In today's episode, we want to talk to you about healthcare, the care for health that you could give and the care for health that you can receive. Imagine if you go to a shop and you have 10 rupees and you give 10 rupees, but the shopkeeper for every 10 rupee that you have allows you to buy something for 1,000. So if you give like 10 rupees, he allows you to pick anything you want for 5,000. And we call this as leverage. Finance and economics as leverage. In productivity, we call this as leverage. You know, how much is your time multiplied from, you put the same 1 hour, but how much is your time multiplied? Biggest factor of leverage is actually in healthcare. Because what we notice is that a lot of times people do the things that they need to do, but they don't get the outcome. They don't multiply the results from what they have to do. A very simple example is, when someone is actually doing a treadmill and they're running and they're jogging. The common understanding is that if you pay attention, if to calorie, and if you cover so much distance in so much time, you're going to get so much result. But the reality is, it's not how many calories that they're burning alone. It's the state of mind. It's what are they processing? Are they watching TV? Are they in a high performance state? Are they relaxed? What are they doing when they're running? In fact, there was a research that was done on when people look straight ahead when they were running on a treadmill versus like they were looking at a TV or at the counter. The results of how much they ran was different. So the 3 people who are running on a treadmill may be putting the same effort, but how much they get from it is so different based on, the state of mind they are in. And it's also sometimes so different based on what they do after that. Because a lot of times after you do a workout, your body wants to have a time where it can activate plasticity that we spoke about earlier. And a lot of times what they do before going to that workout matters, because sometimes there are these things that people consume, at least in the earlier days, where they used to consume sprouts and other things that used to have a lot of rich in protein and other vitamins and minerals. And what that would do is, even though they're putting the same effort, they're getting a lot back in return. Now, I gave you this example because it's a very simple, easy to understand thing. But now think about this translating, the concept of leveraging, translating to more complex things. Like when you're taking care of someone who has dementia, or when you're taking care of someone who has cancer, or even someone who's going for a heart surgery. So today we want to talk about healthcare and how, as an evolution artist, you can be a pillar to your family. And you can do things. You might exactly do what your neighbor or someone else is doing. You might exactly do the same recommendations by the doctor, but the way you do it, how it can make a big difference. Harini, we are here today talking to participants about health and care. I remember there was this man who was going to get a heart surgery done, and he went and he was in the hospital. And the doctors told him, before you come for the surgery, do these breathing exercises. 20 to 30% of the patients who are going through that type of surgery. So it's a very common scenario where the doctor knows that if this patient comes with doing these lung exercises, their chances of coming from the surgery is better, because when they are sedated, when they are on a ventilator, it may not be the heart that is giving up, it might be the lungs that's giving up. So for those type of surgeries, they always ask the patient to do breathing exercises. Now, what I'm referring to here as care, for example, is how does the patient translate that advice, do breathing exercises for 1 week, and let's have the surgery after that. So if you have to take 10 examples of 10 patients who got the same instructions from the doctor, all 10 of them got go and do breathing exercises and come back. And all of the 10 patients, let's say, have one family member giving them care. Now, in the first instance, it might be that the patient is trying to do it by themselves. First of all, they get the exercise wrong, because like everything, you have to do some certain things a few times before you get it right. And most times when doctors say do the breathing exercise, there's no time, because they're top surgeons. They don't have time to sit and spend 30-45 minutes with you to teach you how to do it. So maybe the first case is like, the patient tries to do it, and then after a day or two, because they're doing it wrong, they don't feel a significant improvement, they give up, and nobody cares. The patient goes to the surgery. Now they are on the mercy of luck. If for some reason they survive, they survive, but it's not because they prepared for it. Let's say the second case is the same mistake happens, but the caregiver is now persistent. Now the caregiver is not smart enough to recognize that they're doing the exercise wrong. As far as they are concerned, 15 minutes have they done. And the caregiver is like, okay, are you doing the exercise? And the caregiver is like, telling them to do it. And maybe they do it. But then, even then, there's no difference, because doing it wrong and not doing it is almost the same. And then the third example I can think of is the caregiver is insisting that this patient does it, and the patient is saying, I will do it, and not doing it. And now the caregiver and the patient are fighting. Oh, you don't take your health seriously. You don't do this. You don't do that.
And starts giving advice.
And starts giving advice. Fourth example is a caregiver sees the patient not doing it and they start fighting. Fifth example is the patient didn't even try in the first place. Nobody cared. Sixth example is the patient is trying to learn it, but he doesn't get it. The ideal example would be if the caregiver understood the importance of it. And they recognize, because the doctor is very casually saying, he's saying, let's do the surgery after 1 week. Between now and then, do you do breathing exercise and come? Now, when you hear something like that, it doesn't sound like you may die if you don't do proper breathing exercise. That's not what you're hearing. And the doctor doesn't want to scare the patient. So his advice is do breathing exercise and come. The caregiver is also hearing the same thing. The caregiver, the optimal caregiver, especially if you have skills of an evolution artist, is you're listening to the same instruction from the doctor, and you're finding out, okay, what is this breathing exercise for? What are we going to achieve with it? And the doctor explains how, you're on support for a while, and for the lungs to take back its action, it needs to be more healthy. And maybe the evolution artist finds out, how do we know it's more healthy? And then maybe the doctor says, you could buy this apparatus, and every time you do the exercise, you can blow into it and see how long you're holding the breath. And now you understand the seriousness of it. And you also understand that you might be able to double the capacity in just 1 week. Because we all here do breathing exercises, it's good. But for that particular patient, it's so bad that within 1 week, the capacity to hold on to a single breath doubles. That's a big improvement. Now, if they have that kind of understanding of the situation, the caregiver is going to go an extra step. Either they're going to hire a physiotherapist, or they're going to learn how to do it themselves. And then they're not only going to get the patient to do the exercise, they're going to make sure that the patient is doing it well. And they're not going to look at, okay, 15 minutes. They're going to look at, okay, he's able to hold it for these many seconds. Now he's able to hold it for those many seconds. You might be putting in the same 15 minutes doing the exercise, but the output is several hundred times more than when it's not done well. The same caregiver is just doing the same thing that the doctor said, But when they do it well, it has a very different impact than when not doing it adequately enough.
You can hire people for help for who are professionals at caregiving, but the leverage often is held by the family member. The family member, when they develop, because there are certain things that can be delegated, a professional helper or a caregiver or caretaker, but there are certain things that only the family member is equipped to do, and nobody goes after these things like it's a job description that you're going to build a skill for, because one never knows what can happen in a family, and to always be equipped. And I also think the conviction of the family member makes such a big difference. Like, how much are they just going to take for granted everything that's being told to them in a way that, especially the negative stuff, or are they going to, like you said, recognize the seriousness of it, or be like all determined to find out how can I help this person improve? And I feel at an intention level these days, I do see there is a big difference right at an intention level. How much does the family member intend to do whatever it is that they can or should, or which includes equipping themselves to become ready to be able to offer the right care at the right time, which could mean either life or death, or quality of life versus bad quality of life.
Yeah. So I remember there was a cancer patient who was in a lot of pain. And we met this person together. And I remember that one of the reasons of the pain was his neck position and the pillow. It had nothing to do with cancer.
Yeah.
Now, the patient can't recognize and tell you that difference.
Yeah.
They're in pain, they're clogged with medicine, their brain is not working. But the interesting thing is, none of his family members found out. And they were caring family members. They really wanted this guy to be comfortable till the next outcome is possible. And yes, he had a lot of pain. They were trying to put him on many things that wasn't solving it. But his neck position and the pillow, the moment we just changed it, half the suffering reduced instantly. Now, can you imagine the guy had been in that state for like about 60 to 70 days, and all it required was someone to recognize, yes, there's pain from cancer, but he's also responding to a different pain, which can be easily avoided. When you speak about intent, after some time, people gave up on the possibility to reduce his suffering. They become dependent. Problem with becoming dependent, for example, on a medicine or a painkiller in that regard, is that they're not thinking about what else can we do to reduce discomfort. Is there anything else that is going on? And very soon it's as if they never had an intent itself. And also, when you talk about intent, I think there's the thing between, are you managing something or are you getting back to optimal health? Because there are several things where you can manage, several health conditions where you can manage and feel better.
And a lot, I think, has to do with the unconscious priorities there,
Yeah.
which come in conflict.
Yeah.
Because the moment, so let's say a person is doing very badly, like they've hit like rock bottom of health, and for them they're just feeling grateful now that they have surfaced back. And in that time where they couldn't do some of the things that they were passionate about, like whether it's going out or doing some of the work or whatever it is that they've always gotten their stimulation from, it's like as if all of that was completely stripped away from them for a particular period when their health was at an all-time low. Now that they've surfaced back to just, like you said, like bare minimum they're able to manage, the joy and the hope of having gotten there creates an illusion like as if everything is fine right now. And that miscalculation in that calibration gets people to make wrong decisions or other ineffective decisions, gets them to stretch, gets them to put themselves in certain contexts which could stretch them, which could, like if they had just rested just a little longer, or if they'd done some of those exercises just a little longer, it would have gotten them out of the, like they would have crossed the threshold of health.
So I think, Harini, you jump from the caregiver to the patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're still talking about the caregiver, then it's up to the caregiver to recognize the difference between someone just managing and someone waiting to get to optimal. The difference is a good caregiver is also able to influence the person to wait as long
Yeah.
as necessary so that they're back to their optimal energy. I mean, it's the most stupidest thing to do when you see people who have typhoid, for example. They barely recover, and then maybe 1 or 2 more days they're back into their optimal health, and then they go and they start doing some work or they start taking stressful situations, and then they have to go through the entire period of recovery one more time because there is a reinfection. And now you see reinfection happening so common with even simple things, like it doesn't even have to be typhoid, even simple things like stomach infections and common cold and fever. You see like a reinfection within like 2-3 weeks. It only shows how much people have gotten into this pattern of, okay, I'm better now, instead of I'm back fully. It's a big difference. I remember catching some people who I know taking a dolo and going to work, like taking a paracetamol and going to work. And their thing is, I took a paracetamol, I
And they're
feel
very
fine.
proud of it.
Yeah. Yeah, like I feel fine. Like I'm okay now. When they took a paracetamol, their body was trying to fight an organism, a multitude of organism, either a virus or bacteria, that was multiplying at a rapid speed with the only intention to kill them. And their body is fighting it so fiercely that it has temperature. And when they take the paracetamol, all that happens is that the temperature is controlled, but the fight is still going on. Like, I mean, if you're a soldier in the field, you won't say, I put earbuds, I don't hear the clashing of the swords, so now let me go and work on my field. It's the same thing. The body is in a battlefield. There is a fight going on. And then the person is just taking a paracetamol and they think now they're fine. And then they go to work. And what happens is that the organs in their body start becoming suboptimal. So there's a little more load and a little more effort distributed across other functions of the body, which over a period of time start to show that it is suboptimal. The opposite of this is some educated people who understand that their body is fighting something, might take one dose of an antibiotic and then they might go back to work because they rest for one day, and then the second day, third day they feel like they're fine, they stop the antibiotic. And we've seen a lot of people who die because of that, because at some point these antibiotics become not effective. The organisms in the body have become resistant to those antibiotics. For me, what is interesting about all of this is a lot of people who are doing this, some are living alone, but a lot of people who are doing this, they live in a family. They have friends, they have colleagues, they have peers who care for them, and they can still continue to make such blunders. So that just shows that the health care giving from friends, from peers, from families is nowhere up to the mark. Their body is fighting the organism. Is it going to eradicate it, or is it going to partially leave it there to come back and attack? It's time for the caregivers to step up and not just like say, oh, don't do that, but actually help them, because there's a lot of skill in helping a person make the right decision.
Yeah. When there's like a very efficient evolution artist in the family whose full-time business is doing something else, of course, but they've developed evolution artistry, is where they're able to help this person find and like challenge their own beliefs of what they think is the way they've organized, and that they have to do something a particular way, just gently changing that frame and helping them see things differently, or even giving them ideas as to how to negotiate differently. Because once they're able to do that, then the person now has more peace. And it just creates so many openings for the patient itself, saying, oh yeah, I thought it can't be done that way, but it was actually possible. So what I love about human beings, people developing evolution artistry, and when people develop evolution artistry, they're not necessarily putting on the filter of healthcare or caregiving. They're developing evolution artistry as the core fundamental capabilities of leading people, understanding deeper intentions, recognizing timing, the art of leverage, and so many of these amazing essential human capabilities that you don't learn in MBA college, that you don't learn even at your workplace, no matter what your roles are, because at work often you develop very functional capabilities, but the kind of people that develop evolution artistry for all the other benefits in life, when it actually comes to a moment in their family where they're encountering a situation where some loved one is actually going through trouble, it's like they may not even have anticipated that all of the evolution artistry they've been building translates into that
So, Harini, you
moment.
keep talking about evolution artistry. I just want to clarify what is it that you're referring to
Evolution
for audience who
artistry
might be here like for the first time.
Evolution artistry is the art of recognizing the connection between immediate decisions and its impact, the long term consequences. Being aware of it and also being able to navigate people in the ecosystem to be able to organize and do things differently in a way that it leads to a good short term outcome as well as a good long term
So
outcome.
let's say you have this situation where someone says it's impossible for me to take leave today. I have to go, and they're popping in paracetamol. So what's the difference between someone who's like nagging them to take rest and eventually does, because a lot of spouses
It
do
works
that.
sometimes.
If you love me, you can go. If you love me, you will stay here, and then bang their head against the wall
Well, it'll
or
work
shout.
once, it might work
To,
twice.
so what's the difference between that and an evolution artist doing it?
And
So
an
let's say if the
evolution,
spouse was an evolution artist, what would be the difference in the outcome? Now, if you just speak about the outcome, in both cases, the person said didn't go. But what would be the difference?
in the first case, when the person is not an evolution artist and is probably nagging them, is like the person's going to give in because the other one's being a pest, like
And it spoils the relationship.
it spoils the relationship.
Like,
It makes it
unconsciously,
unpleasant.
it feels like when they have to spend time together again, it feels like there's a distance, or there's a, like, although you recognize that the other person cares, but
Unconsciously, there's
unconsciously,
repulse.
you're not excited by
Being,
that
yeah.
thing. Whereas when the person is an evolution artist and manages to accomplish that, this person has become a better person. They started having better predictive intelligence. The person is choosing themselves not to go there. In fact, you've broken their ceiling of what is possible and not possible. And it may even enhance the relationship. In this particular case, one person is doing the same thing as the other person, but in one it builds the relationship, and the other it creates a strain on the
It
relationship.
creates a strain on the relationship. And for every evolution artist, there's also, that I've seen every evolution artist in a family where they're encountering a situation where a family member is going through unfortunate health, whether it's a short term one or a long term one. I've noticed that the evolution artist somehow is able to raise the bar of what is possible, raise the bar of excellence in healthcare. So it's not one of those cases where they get to a space where they wouldn't allow a situation of just managing or just being okay, but it's like almost evolution artist envisions a much better outcome, systematically navigating across all the family members and all of the everything that's going on and all of the constraints, and doing their very best to ensure that as a family they don't settle for a suboptimal outcome, and instead they're going for raising the bar and standard of what's possible in recovery. And this doesn't even have to do anything to do with medicine.
But honey, most people do that. Like, a lot of people, let's say someone has cancer and they're going through chemotherapy, and the doctor says do these things. They get well, and most families would give the support, and everybody's looking at, okay, what is the best outcome that we can achieve for this person?
How efficiently are they able to do it?
When you say how efficiently are they able to do it, give me an example of how in the implementation. So let's say both families are completely determined to help the person recover, but in the actual implementation, in the actual doing, how do they differ when someone has some of these skills that you're talking about versus when someone doesn't, and the impact that it has practically had on the patient?
I remember there's, one of the participants was talking about how her uncle complains about how the mother doesn't listen to anybody but only listens to this one person. Now, this one person, who's the evolution artist, doesn't even live there, doesn't like go there every day, is not like there all the time. And there have been extended periods of time where she's really actually stayed there. But just her moments of being there for like an extended period of time, the person is more cheerful, they're more joyful, they're more willing to do some of the things that they've been asked to do, looking forward to life, and they're actually living life more happily. She often talks about, I also tell my mom the same thing. I also tell her to do the exact same things, but she only listens to you and she doesn't listen to me. Now the difference is, when she spoke about how that uncle of hers was like forcing her to eat and not looking and seeing that her body is screaming that I'm done, like I can't eat any further. But now he's pushing and he's making her eat even more from a state of mind without
This much
recognizing.
quantity has to be consumed.
Yeah.
Whereas the evolution artist is actually paying attention. Okay, the person is full. And thereby, when the person comes and says the next time, maybe after an hour or two, why don't you eat more? This person is, yeah, let's do it.
This particular person, when she was observing this happening, she noticed that the person has difficulty in swallowing. Now, this the evolution artist was able to notice, and she suggested something to the patient, saying, "Can you do it this way, or can you gave her some slightly different strategies?" And suddenly now it was easier to swallow. Now, this is a very precise observation that just made it easier.
Yeah, so to make it simple for the audience, like, if you're chewing something and you have an infection on one side, then, or there's pain on one side of the teeth, it's common sense that till you go to a dentist and get it fixed, you chew on the other side. But when this happens with a cancer patient, when it happens with someone who's in a fatal condition, they're not able to come to that conclusion themselves. So in this particular example that Harini is talking about, this cancer patient had difficulty swallowing. And even while swallowing, sometimes when you eat food, there are different ways you can swallow. Sometimes you can even try and adjust, like pushing the food through one side. Anybody who's had like a throat infection, when there's pain, how you manage to swallow around it, and or change the type of food. And the interesting thing is, nobody noticed that this girl was suffering and not eating as much because she was actually having pain. And the patient did not say it. And this is very common when it comes to patients, especially in chronic fatal conditions. And a caregiver with an ability to be in high performance, not in panic, not sad, not depressed, not bored, is active, is intelligent, is sharp, is able to have excellence for themselves in their awareness, will be able to notice, because everything that Harini and I spoke right now are not out of the ordinary things. We're talking about adjusting the pillow, but that was a lifesaver for someone. We're talking about noticing pain and recommending a different way to eat. So each of these things are not out of the world. They're simple things, but they are things that are missed. They are things that until someone stepped in, they were continuously missed. And so the question is, when we think about evolving people, we also think about how do we evolve ourselves first, and what must be true for intelligent, smart, caring people to miss out on obvious signals. It comes to something that Harini and I call as on-demand state choice. Your ability, no matter what is going on, to be in your prime and peak performance state. And a lot of people can't do that, especially when you give care. There was a study that was done by a very renowned therapist called Milton Erickson. And he found out that when family members visited patients in hospitals, the patients actually took longer to recover than if family members didn't go to visit them. And he concluded that most times when family members went to visit them, the patient was forced to put their attention on making sure the family member was feeling okay instead of putting their attention on
Their
recovery. Now, what we are talking about is an evolution artist, as a person, as you as a person who's way above that, in a way that when you visit somebody, that the dynamics change, they recover faster. They're not just faster than if nobody visited, they're faster recovering because you appeared in that scene. And some of the examples that Harini took are also examples of people who are not necessarily living with the family, they visited. The caring people who visited. They always say that a surgeon cannot operate on his own family most times because, they might be nervous, they might be associated. But as a caregiver, you are. You are operating on your family. You are a caregiver, and the things that you do makes a big difference. Simple things. When you pay attention to how they sleep, what stops their sleep, the air they breathe, and all of these things, how they breathe, sometimes just helping a patient turn from one side to the other just immediately corrects some of the difficulties that they are going through. But you don't have to be a doctor to know this. In fact, none of what Harini and I are saying are medical advice. But these are things we have noticed on the field. Why does it happen? Because sometimes, one side is clogged, there's pain on one side, there's so many reasons. And then the person intuitively just helps the patient turn the other side, and everything clears up. So these are very, 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 very simple, easy, achievable things.
Yeah.
And Harini spoke about priority and that's a very important thing because we have helped a lot of our participants recover their eyesight.
Yeah.
When I say recovering, I said obviously not making blind to see, at least not yet. But we have had instances where people come with lens or they wear glasses, and then after a while they don't need to because their eyesight had improved. But I don't know if you know this, that in the initial days when the glasses came into existence, these were called as corrective lenses.
Yeah.
The reason they call it corrective lenses is because they would give a lens and they would, along with it, give eye exercises. And I'm talking about actual medical doctors.
Wow.
They would give like a lens and they would give eye exercises. And as the patient continues to do those exercises, what would happen is that there'll be a little reduction in the power, that it'll come more closer to normal. Then they would change that lens to a different lens and they would gradually reduce the power till it almost or fully comes back to normal power. When you ask about what must be true, why are people not doing it now? The only answer is because nobody is going to take the time to do the exercises that corrects the actual power on the lens. So the priority has become managing. It's like, you know what? If I don't have to do 1 hour of, a half an hour of corrective exercises for my eyes, it's okay. As long as you give me a glass and I can go back to work. Till I can go. And for most people, it's not even go back to work. Till I can go back to my Netflix or I can go back to my TV show instead of spending that 30 minutes on correcting it. And we're not talking about now. We're talking about decades ago. Now, people don't even have the choice anymore because nobody prescribes this to them.
Yeah.
But imagine there was a time when people had the choice and they choose managing the condition instead of correcting the condition. So that's another example of that priority thing that you spoke about.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we do is when we help people evolve evolution artistry is naturally the bar of what's possible. To shift it from the managing frame to let's get back to optimal frame. Like you said, it comes with a cost where you have to do certain things. But most of the time, people are unable to do it. Like now, even if they had the choice, they're unable to do it because now they have so many things to do. They can't make time for this. They're already so stretched out. They're burned out. They're tired. They're exhausted. And then there's emotionally so many things that are happening in life. Even get out of the managing frame and getting into an optimal health frame, I don't know how anybody can achieve it without personal evolution for themselves, because you just spoke about how they need their personal evolution in the quest of evolving people for them to continuously raise the bar of personal excellence, personal productivity. Back then, it may have been far simpler, but still people chose to do managing over getting to optimal. And today, with like the multitude of things that and the pressure and just, as a world, we've become such a different world now compared to decades ago, like you said. In this era, to be able to perform at optimal, to not accept substandard levels in anything in life, to not be in like the managing okay kind of a trajectory, but to get
But
to
do people
excellence.
know that they're accepting substandard, especially as caregivers? According to them, they're very productive. They're taking care of their work. They're taking care of their sick patient at home. And even the person who did not adjust that pillow position because the person did not have pain, like after we did what we did, they recognized, oh, there was pain on the neck because of the pillow position. But until then, they were thinking they were doing their best. And in fact, they were thinking they were optimal. So how does one come to that position where they actually discover that something more is possible within the care that they're committing to give
Without extra effort.
without extra effort. We're just talking about, doctor said something, they're already going through a treatment. So, one of the recommendations I make to people is that assume that there is more possible first.
Yeah.
And what would someone do when they think something is really possible more? They would commit more time. Let's say there's a care that has to be given. Let's say, let's just go back to the breathing exercise. Can a person actually commit an entire hour to be with the patient and be with them while they're doing the breathing exercise? That's time commitment. But if the person is just, managing it, or just like if they're doing it without that kind of dedication, then what will happen is they'll be doing their work from a computer, or they will be like, getting ready for their office. They'll say, Father, did you finish the exercise? The amount they're giving is 2 minutes to check whether the person finished the exercise. Okay, you finished the exercise, good, and they run. Compare that for an entire week versus if you sat with them 1 hour while the person is trying to do that breathing exercise. There's no way you won't find out that there's a better outcome. Hey, something doesn't look right about that. So people say, if I need more time, I will make more time, not a problem. But my recommendation is you'll never find out that you need more time. It starts with your commitment first, that you commit the time first. And especially when family members say, can you help me help, this person, that person in my family? I say, block out 4 hours every day, 2 hours, 1 hour, depending on what I'm dealing with. For the next 6 months, come back and then tell me, and I'll explore with you what is possible. And they say, no, and no, you tell me, tell me what all I should do. I'll make time for it. I say, it doesn't work that way, because you don't know. I don't know.
And that's the most incredible thing about healthcare and caregiving is you don't know what you don't know.
And you don't know what is going to come that's going to destroy that person faster than you expected. And also, you don't know what opportunity will present itself that will allow them to come back when nobody else expected, including them. Most of the miracles we've seen, including Funny Kumar, is when I first met him and doctors had given up, he had given up, his family had given up, and he had a little bit of hope trying, is it possible to regain movements? Is he was actually moving, nobody noticed it. It was micro movements that was happening in his toes visibly, and I sat there and I noticed it. And then we used that little movement to regain all the other movements that we regained for him, using one cluster of muscles and the movements of it to activate the others. That's what happened to Milton Erickson. He was polio struck, he was paralyzed, he found a little opportunity and then he caught hold of it. But if he wasn't paying attention, he wouldn't have caught hold of it. So I think when it comes to healthcare, the rule of thumb is don't say I'll do whatever I have to do, whatever I should do, whatever I must do, I'll make the time for it. Say I am committing this much time for it. And I will find and wait for that opportunity, that moment to come, based on which I can base the entire result for this person. Correcting eyesight as well. Commit that time and maybe find a doctor who can prescribe to them eye exercises. But what people would say is, if there is a chance for it to improve, then I'll commit time. Right there's an expectation of, okay, please don't make me commit time. And I think the thing about committing time is you're committing that time, whether there's a great outcome or not. And I think that's how healthcare can be really effective. Because as humans, I think we notice opportunities. If we have the minimum on-demand state choice, the ability to be in high performance, the ability to continue to stay sharp. And the other thing that I would recommend is, if people can put their attention on life after recovery as much as the recovery itself, nothing is more boring to a patient than, oh, you're so sick. Oh, it breaks my heart. Oh, and how long can a patient hear that? But if you're talking to them about life, you're talking to them about their children, and you're talking to them about their projects, you're talking to them about things that they're curious about, stimulating their mind. Now, that takes the attention away from the problem. And most times what it allows the patient to do is it allows their unconscious mind to take charge, take responsibility. Often, when people put their conscious attention on something, it's their way to stop the unconscious process. That's why a lot of times we've noticed that, when we're doing certain health outcomes, we put people to sleep and then they come back better than they were before. So you can't put people to sleep 24 hours. But what you can do is you can shift their conscious attention from the sickness to the joy of life afterwards. So I think it comes down to superior capability
Definitely. I
of
mean, what
the
imagine what
artist.
tremendous effort it is to
Yeah.
bring someone who's sick and who's depressed and cranky, perhaps, to actually get them into the joy of life, and then they might go back,
Yeah.
to where they were, and then again you bring them to the joy of life, and it's a continuous effort, it's sustained effort, it's commitment. It starts with commitment, and when you have superior capabilities, it's such a killer combination.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very rare that to have, the commitment. So the intention, commitment, along with superior capabilities, just makes it a winning combination in this space of caregiving, because then you won't have to caregive for a long time, and you'll notice that the patient is never stuck where they was, but they're continuously improving. And it's possible to make that happen even though you may not be a medical doctor, and that's the beautiful part, because you go to a hospital or you go to a doctor and then you meet them, the consultation is brief, or you do a surgery, that's brief, but what happens after that? And like you said, post some of those interventions, where the majority of the time the person
It's
is
so
back.
sad how many people who with rehabilitation could have regained their brain power, their walking ability, and just because it was missed for a few days, they miss all of that. So yes, it's a lot about, there is the medical procedure, but a lot of what happens is the care, and it's the capability, it's the joy of life, and it's you committing time before you know why and how you're going to use that time. If you're not stupid, you're going to use that time usefully.
Yeah.
So don't say if needed. When you take if needed, it's never going to be needed. Commitment is you putting that time out. You're saying, I will be there. And depending on the context, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 10 days. And as a caregiver, when you put that kind of conviction into it, we know of someone who's like 70 plus and she's on a ventilator and sedated.
I was just thinking about the same person.
And the daughter just put their commitment saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to be there several hours a day. Patient who was supposed to die didn't die. She's recovering. She's gaining more consciousness. She's interacting with family. She's finally having a quality of life different from what anybody else had anticipated. And this daughter did not know anything about this. All she knew was, I'm going to be there. I'm going to put that time. Now, if you have to cancel a job and put your time, not knowing something will come out or not, that's commitment. Every daughter, every parent will put time when they know they have to do something. But can you put that time even when you don't know if it's going to do something or not? That is commitment. And when you put that time, you will figure things out. It's incredible how humans figure out things when they commit.
So true.
So, Harini, do you want to talk about some of the things as an artist, as an evolution artist that you have done that have been a game changer for your own father? I remember, like, when you first brought him and we met him,
Yeah.
I think the doctors, and this is scary because the neurologist who met him diagnosed his condition as depression. And then I saw him walk and I said, wait, something is wrong with his brain. This is not an emotional thing. And you took him to the neurologist again, and he again confirmed it is depression, and he even wrote a report. And I said, change your neurologist, get a second opinion. And then you took him to one of the leading neurologists, and he looked at him and he said, there's dementia. And then he sent him for a scan, and the scan revealed dementia.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting because I think for caregivers, they have to know that doctors are doing the best, but they're not always right.
Right. Yeah.
And here is something that was staring at the eye. I'm not a doctor, but it was, when you look at him, you feel something is going on with the brain. And with his vision, with the way he was walking, he is recovered now. Like, I mean, he can walk better. He doesn't have any of those difficulties that I originally saw him
Yeah.
have when he first came, which itself is a miracle, because in the medical field, it's not possible to recover once the brain starts
Degenerating.
degenerating. As a caregiver, it's important that you're also able to go past the limitations of doctors.
Yeah.
Because there may be some things that are not a limitation of medical science, but they are limitations of the doctor themselves.
Oh, so true.
One of the things you do as an evolution artist is you go past the limitations of the doctor and explore what is actually going on, what is actually possible. So after that, I think he got into a stage where his brain recovered a lot of functions. And then as the condition started progressing and progressing and progressing further, and he's recently started losing memory of some of the things that he used to remember. And the biggest challenge is he even forgets that he is sick,
Yeah.
that he has a memory condition. So what is something that has been a game changer for him that you did? Like, obviously as a daughter, you've done the three things that we spoke about. You've committed time, and amidst a busy schedule, you've said, okay, these are the hours I'm going to be with you. And I don't think you had an agenda. You don't know what you're going to achieve, because they have a routine, you have everything. And you have also looked at life and not just recovery, because when you're with him, you're looking at he likes singing, he likes to talk about the things he's accomplished in work. You have those conversations instead of putting his condition over there.
Yeah.
And I'm given it's Harini, I'm assuming that you're in high performance state and you're sharp, and you're like you love him, you have empathy for him, but at the same time you want to be efficient, and
Yeah.
you're right there on the field with him. Given that you have been doing this, is there like one particular moment that you may want to share with the audience that shows how sometimes just at the level of caregiving, there are obvious things that we may miss, and when we bring it back, it reduces suffering for both the caregiver and the patient?
Some of the most obvious things, I mean, like I said, if I'm just parking aside all the EIT work, like the excellence installations work and the procedures that I'm directly doing for him for that, if I'm just looking at it from the perspective of as a caregiver,
Yeah.
my number one function, even though I allocate stipulated hours, for me, it's like almost through the day, like I have a camera at home, so I can see his movements. I know how he's moving. So my number one function with my father is just observation. I would say that's my number one function. Just a few moments ago, you spoke about you're waiting for that moment where you can do something, but for you to know when to do what to do in a way that it will land, that's the difference that makes all the difference. In that moment, because
Yeah,
there are
you're waiting for an opportunity to present that nobody expected.
Yes.
So should you have an example of that?
Like there was a time when my mom was extremely sick, and my dad is so dependent on my mom given his condition. It was like kind of an unhealthy setup, because there's over dependence on the mother, and there's a situation where the mother is so sick and she isn't able to have peaceful sleep, because she's now concerned about how he's doing in the night when he's sleeping, because there's a chance that he could fall down, and that's happened once in the past. So, or if he wants to get up and go to the restroom and all of that. She was so sick, and she was getting worse because she couldn't get the rest that her body demanded. I remember you told me, like I came and consulted, and then you told me that you have to get into a setup where at least for 2 days she can get complete rest, like a complete rest for her body to just recover, because she's literally hit rock bottom in her health, and it was like probably worse than a double ICU situation that she was going through. I was thinking, how am I even going to orchestrate that kind of a situation? But it happened where I was able to move things around, and then I was with my dad. It was like the first moment where he looked at me and he didn't know that I was his daughter. So it was emotionally extremely hard hitting to be able to step up at that moment.
But you're there on a mission.
Yeah, I'm on a mission. So I'm like, there's no time for me to sit and behave like a wounded soldier, but I have to step up and do what I have to do. So I remember those 2 days of being with him throughout was like my first hand experience into what was like actually, what was it like being around 24/7 and to observe and recognize the variety of states of mind that he's going into. Extreme fear, extreme panic. Those moments when he's completely disoriented, to those moments when a window of time where he's able to understand and remember and just get a sense of what's going on. Now, he might forget it shortly later. But what I did was, for a few moments, like I was just, looking around, observing, noticing what was happening. And then I started orchestrating, creating more of those windows of opportunity where he's more grounded. Like I'm noticing what are the things that are pushing him to the brink on the wrong side. What are the things that are helping him be better? Use those moments, those micro moments where I notice like this is the time where I need to help him understand that this is the situation.
So what you're saying, Harini, is that if I were to just give context to the audience, the person has forgotten the other daughter.
Yeah.
And at that moment, it feels impossible to help him understand that he needs to allow a caretaker to be around.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time we introduce a caretaker.
And the mother is so sick that she's probably visiting critical care like often, and every time she recovers, she's hitting rock bottom again. And she has no clue either how to help him agree to a household help. Then there is this constant dependence and anger that, hey, you're not helping me when I need, and he doesn't know he's not letting anybody help him. So it's like fully traumatic. The normal approach to this situation in most families is they start drugging the patient.
Oh yeah.
Now, they don't drug the patient first. They sometimes take them to a care unit, and a lot of care units actually they drug the patient and they call it as we are helping them manage the emotion. Obviously, I don't want to say don't put your patients and parents in homes like that. But what I'm pointing out is the homes are doing the best they can, and they're trying to avoid violence and using force to restrain a person, and they use drugs to reduce that emotion. So that's the normal route. That's the managing route. But what you did instead is you paid attention and you committed like a week and you're just looking at him and you're noticing that in between the times when all of this drama is going on, there are moments when his brain is able to understand.
And in those moments is when I would I would be in so much rapport with him and put it across to him in a way that he gets it. That it's not a joke, that it's not a light situation.
And you're also putting it across to him in a way, and I've noticed you do this once, and you're also putting it across to him in a way that's like he gets it, but he's not still embarrassed.
Yeah.
He's not disappointed with life. He's still looking forward for life, but he gets it that he needs help right now. So from a stage where he's like screaming, yelling, and difficult to restrain and understand,
or the other extreme, like crying and
embarrassed, to thinking that the guy who's there to help him is actually some servant who's attached himself and wants to rob all the properties and run away, to like helplessness and chaos inside the house. You actually got it to a stage where there's a functional setup where your mother can sleep in the night, your father is taken care of. You set up, each time you set up, you saw an opportunity. You also taught him and also set up reminders, ways for him to educate himself. In such a way, now with minimal effort, family works as a unit where the mother is focusing on her quality of life while taking care of him. She's healthier and he's okay with the servant who he thinks is going to steal. He's okay with the attender. Right now, on an experimental treatment, that may increase his chance to once again get his memory back. In fact,
and I already see that happening because I'm able to see how he's, remembering certain things better. He's more perceptual now. He has a better sense of what's going on with the other person. Like some of these, and because for him it became really challenging because it was not only dementia and advanced dementia, it was also the early stages of Parkinson's. Now it's like two deadly brain diseases coming at the same time.
Yeah.
Is like so terrible for the person.
And a person recovering memory, and we've made this happen so many times, but this time, at that current condition, him recovering memory is nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah.
And we're not saying external installations can do that, But what we're saying is with proper care, we can reduce the damage, we can still maintain good quality of life, but it wouldn't have happened if you did not commit that time. It wouldn't have happened if you did not have the superior capability for you to look at him objectively when he said, "Who are you?" And
Yeah.
instead of crying and weeping, and then because you've lost the opportunity, the next time you come again, you're going to remember that.
Yeah.
But for you to be objective there, and it wouldn't have happened if you did not give him hope and joy of what life is as he recovers.
I think just the capability of being extremely sensitive to those micro moments where you can use that moment to leverage
Yeah.
the leverage either to educate or to lead them into doing something specific and leading them to be joyful. Like, he's looking forward to meet me now, but he's not dependent on me. He's looking forward to meet me because when I go, when I just greet him with a hi,
Yeah.
he has the brightest smile on his face because that's how I go to meet him. I'm not like, like dealing with it like, oh, this is so much work or any of those things.
And it's
Well,
not like you've been dealing with this for years together. This is new to you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
a lot of
not
the
an
audience would say,
experienced-
"Oh, I've never done this in my life before."
Yeah.
But that's life. And you have to deal with it. And that's why we say you need the superior capability. That's why you need the on demand state choice. Because a lot of times when you're giving care, you've never given care for that condition or that severity before. And for others, if you're lucky that nobody in your family, if you're blessed in a way that nobody in your family is suffering from such condition, these capabilities and this mindset that we have discussed here will also help you to give care when you visit your relatives. You might be just in that moment, notice, do, say certain things that becomes a game changer for the patient, for the person receiving the healthcare.
And most times people might not recognize what are you doing so differently, but they just know that when you arrive,
Yeah.
the mood changes, the atmosphere changes, the zone changes. It's like you're
Yes.
suddenly the light,
Yeah.
and you become the hope, not because you're giving words of positive advice or anything of that sort, but
Yeah.
it's just your demeanor, your what you put your attention to, and how you orchestrate this situation, not just with the person who may be needing care, but with the entire family. It
Yeah.
might be that one or two observations that you make,
Yeah.
and you're able to offer the right suggestions to the family members in a way that they're able to receive it and act on it.
Yeah.
Now, these are very evolved skills, but these are not skills that you learn in a medical school, nor are they skills that you learn in an office, nor are they skills that you learn only by being a professional caretaker. But it's
So always watch out for that person. There's that, sometimes you are not that person. It's okay. You don't have to let your pride or ego or anything come on the way. And a lot of people actually have someone in their family, but they don't use them as much.
Yeah.
And there's always somebody, when that person visits, something is improving in the patient.
Yeah.
And when you are the kind of person who's evolved and has lesser of pride or ego, you will notice it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like the person, you might notice that that person is having a positive impact on this individual. Then work out a deal, work out some arrangement where that person can come. What can you do for them? What can you do for them that makes their life easy so that they can come and help you with it? And Harini, I also want to bring to attention here that you have been taking care of this situation, and here there are two people you had to give care to. One is your father and your mother.
Yeah.
So you had to give your care for your mother to give care for her husband, and at the same time set up a new system and all of those things while you were active in the business. You were still meeting participants.
Yeah.
You were still a strategist when it comes to marketing. You were still creating valuable assets. You still made a lot of progress on your writing, and you were doing all of these things together.
And taking care of my own immediate family, like the husband and
And
the
your 4
ecosystem
dogs.
here, and yeah.
So for those audience who might be thinking it's impossible, you just have to recognize it is impossible until you develop certain superior capabilities. And often the capabilities itself come when you jump into the field with the intent. Now, we recommend reducing the suffering by going in prepared. That if you develop the capabilities first and then you get into the field, it's easier for you. It's ecological for everyone. There's less hurt, there's less pain. But sometimes when you have to do it, even if you're not prepared, you just jump in. And you're very clear that, because I think It's irresponsible for you to drop your work responsibilities because you have to take care of someone. So when Harini and I were talking about, you have to prioritize and commit the time for your family, we are not at all saying that, be irresponsible somewhere else. We are saying it's possible that you can commit that time for your family, for giving that care without dropping the responsibility someone has entrusted to you, or the responsibilities you have entrusted to yourself. Remember the saying from the scripture that was said long time ago. If someone can be trusted with small things, they can be trusted with big things. When you drop responsibilities that is given to you from work, or that you have given to yourself, or something that you've committed to in the society, you're likely to drop responsibilities in bigger things in life as well. So this is not about run away from responsibilities because, oh my God, family is important, health is important. It is about, yes, prioritize a higher standard. But remember, it's possible. You may have to go through a challenge, but the capabilities will evolve. At the end of the experience, you are not the same person anymore. When Fani Kumar came and asked me if I can help him recover moments, I didn't know I could do it, but I committed the time. I committed the resources. When we got a breakthrough for him, I was no longer the same person. And that's the biggest thing out of all of this, is that when you go for integrated life outcomes, when that becomes your lifestyle, everything you do will make you better at everything you do.
Wow. The ANH Podcast.